There we go. It's live. I
Hello.
like how
So,
Bonnie is broadcasting through a potato right now.
Am I?
It looks like it.
It should be, but I do have terrible internet, so
That could be
could
it.
be.
It could be just a network of potato roots through which the data is traveling. Annie, what are we doing here?
if you look in your email, you will find 4 scenes
Oh,
that Bonnie has created for us to do, and she says they're out of order and the chapters aren't numbered so that any listeners won't know where the scenes are in the actual book. A
ha!
mixture of serious banter and some combat. Scene 1 is with Idris as the narrator, and the rest are Saris as the narrator. She also said that she found some script errors while going through, and the Google Doc
Oh,
has
oh.
fixed
Do we need to tell people that?
script errors. Well, I don't know. I don't have an endless string of words to say, so I'm just continuing with the script here.
I think maybe you should tell people like what this show is, though.
Oh,
And this one's kind of yours, so
Is mine? Is mine?
this show is yours. This one.
Uh, this is Sound Booth Theater Live. We're working with Bonnie
Oh,
Price on this book that I'm narrating for her called Deck of Souls. And we're going to do some scenes from that, and she's going to help us with some of our character voices that we come across in the scenes. And you're going to get a little sneak peek into the story and the relationships.
mm. So hi, Bon. Thanks for coming.
hi. Thanks for having me.
It's an honor. We're having fun already with this book. We started recording yesterday.
Yesterday, yeah.
Yeah, and the Discord has been pretty crazy, at least for yesterday, because both Annie and I were there for it.
Crazy
And
is a word
everyone's,
for it.
yeah, crazy is a word for it. So I think Annie's going to be on and off in our Discord. Remember, guys, to check the description below. First of all, you'll find the Kindle version of Fateseal, Deck of Souls Book 1 by Bonnie Price. The link to the Kindle version is there. So if you can't wait for the audiobook, if you have to know what a Beastkin would write if they wrote Gamelit, then you can find out there before the audio comes out. Or you can also check out all of our Facebook links, and the Discord link is at the very bottom. If you join our Discord, you can hang out with Annie and Bon. Often Bon is there
It's dangerous.
while the narration is going on. So, what are we doing? We're doing the first scene.
Yep.
Okay, and this is my responsibility.
Indeed.
This is Annie's show, but I'm starting it off. Okay. So, we already discussed what Idris is supposed to sound like, but Bonnie, can you give us a little bit of an introduction to Idris? Give the listeners a bit of an introduction and remind them what your direction to me was. It's so charging.
So Idris is one of the demon kings of the world Jairskir. He is an incubus. And my direction for Jeff was pretty much dark and sexy with a Welsh, British, Scottish hybrid accent. So you're welcome for that. He's sort of designed to be a debonair villain, but he had other things in mind while I was writing. So he became sort of this very regal character that's also contrasted by being a bloody, just brutal warrior.
So he's almost like an anti-hero. type?
Yeah, kind of.
My favorite kinds. Okay, well let's get this show on the road. Let me see if there's anybody talking shit in the chat right now. None. Come on, guys. Pick up your game. We need the shit talking to happen. Okay. I'm sure it'll start happening once I start narrating. All right. So this is a scene between Idris and Saris. Maybe it's their meeting. I don't know.
They've already established a relationship
of
some sort.
My cough drop. Hopefully I won't die while I'm narrating. We'll see. The quiet rustling of sheets and a brief burst of frigid air roused me from an otherwise content slumber. It did not take long for me to remember how I had gotten there. The pleasant sting of scratches down much of my torso made certain I could not forget. My heart fell when I heard soft footsteps. I cracked my eyes open, confirming it was still late at night. Faint moonlight filtered in through the windows, illuminating a brief glimpse of Saris's pearlescent hair and scales as she slipped from the room. That she carried her discarded robe in her arms was quite telling. She intended to leave for the night. With her gone, I rolled onto my back and stared at the ceiling in thought. My bed had already begun to grow colder in her absence. A sigh escaped me when I felt my chest clench. I wanted her to stay with me until morning and return to me again the following night. Why is she attempting to sneak out? Frowning, I slowly sat up in bed, pushing my hair out of my eyes. I had not heard the door to my suite close, nor had I felt the ripple of magic to indicate it had locked, meaning Saris was still here, somewhere. I slid out of bed and strode through my suite in search of the demoness in question. Lazing about would not provide me with the answers I sought. When I found her, I was struck once more by her beauty. Her back was facing me as she sat in the bath, running her fingers through her hair. She had not lit any of the mage lights or candles, leaving only moonlight to illuminate her work. I'm supposed to be the one coughing.
Sorry.
Desire threatened to rise within me, but I shoved it away with practiced ease. I was there for answers, not for another tryst. Saris, I spoke softly, watching as she grew still, aside from her swaying tail.
I'm sorry. Did I wake you?
Saris glanced over her shoulder, her expression unreadable. As I had thought, something was miss. You did. I thought I might convince you to come back to bed, I replied, giving her a warm smile. My hope had been that a friendly approach would encourage her to stay, but instead, her face flushed ever so slightly, and she looked away from me.
That probably isn't a good idea.
She shook her head. My heart sank, and for a moment I could not feel my limbs. What had I done wrong? She had opened up to me and shown so much interest in the past day, yet suddenly she had become distant again.
I'm almost done here, then I'll return to my rooms. I doubt your subjects would be happy if they learned I'd spent the night with you. Again.
And why should we care what they think? I frowned, confused, but she refused to look at me. Furthermore, if that is your reason, don't you think sneaking back to your rooms in the middle of the night would raise further questions?
Oh, sorry. Wouldn't it be better for them to realize I'm just food?
Saris countered, a tinge of venom in her tone as she bristled. Taken aback, I simply stared at her for a moment. A heavy sigh left her, and her shoulders slumped.
Sorry. I know that isn't fair. It's just this idea of having to feed in such an intimate way.
Did I not satisfy you? I asked, dumbfounded by her behavior. I thought...
What? No! That isn't it at all.
She yelped, finally turning to look up at me. She shook her head hard for emphasis, her cheeks rosy and her captivating amethyst gaze apologetic.
If that's not what I meant to imply. It's just, well, the whole platonic sex thing.
Her cheeks grew redder, and she finally released an aggravated sigh.
Leaving is the polite thing to do. No awkward, thanks for the food. No uncomfortable, why are you still here? No weird breakfast. No pissing off the people who actually have a right to you.
You kissed me like that, and you dare claim that our night together was platonic. I paused, the last part in her train of excuses sinking in. People who have a right to me.
Like I've said before, Earth hasn't had royalty or nobility in a long time.
Ceres muttered. She squeezed herself, her gaze downcast.
It wasn't considered it wasn't considered proper or possible for royalty or nobility to cavort with people in the lower classes. There were plenty of affairs, but nothing good ever came of them. So, considering I'm basically a peasant here, and the nobles are already...
And what makes you think that the champion of Nabir Zon would be thought of as a peasant? I asked, failing to suppress the threatening growl from my voice. If one of my subjects was responsible for her skittishness, I would have their head. Sighing, I stepped out of her way as she ascended the steps of the bath. The sight of her sent my heart racing. Honestly, when did I become so...
Well, you and your subjects... Oh, sorry. That wasn't a... Sorry. Well, you and your subjects dislike humans, and that's what I technically am.
She picked up a towel and began to dry herself, refusing to look at me again.
I can't expect anyone to think of me in a better light until I've proved that I'm on your side and that I can be useful.
And if I wish you to remain with me? I asked softly. Not only tonight, but the next night, the night after that, and for many more. This time, I was close enough to hear her heart skip several beats before beginning to race. She faltered, nearly dropping her towel. Alas, her shoulders and tail drooped, and she slowly shook her head.
It's for the best that I don't. I don't want to become attached, remember?
She muttered, reaching for her nightgown and robe.
You didn't do anything wrong, Idris. I just don't know how to make you understand why going back to the Queen's Tower is the best decision for me right now. For me now. The best decision for now. Oh, come on, Ceres. Ceres. Sorry. Oh, come on, Ceres.
Her thoughts reached me as her fists briefly curled tight around her robe before pulling it on.
What are you doing? Best sex you've ever had, and you're being a total cunt. You know better than to think he's just going to toss you aside. Is growing more attached really that bad? More attached. This woman is so unfair.
That
I
one's
took a
supposed to be
steady-
from Idris.
Oh, sorry.
Ah,
I see.
more
I didn't catch that one
attached.
earlier.
More attached. This woman is so unfair. I took a steadying breath and reached out to run my fingers through Ceres's damp hair. For a moment she leaned into the caress, but she soon stopped herself and looked away. If you insist that returning to the Queen's Tower is truly what is best for you, I will not try to stop you. Know that, should you change your mind, I will always welcome you with open arms. Her breath caught. I thought, hoped that perhaps her mind had changed. But she slowly pulled away from me and clutched her robe shut. The color in her cheeks was the only clear indication that she had failed to keep me out. She could not meet my eye. She could not meet my eyes, only succeeding in raising them to my collarbone.
Good night, Idris.
Her soft, sensual tone sent a shiver of desire through my body, setting me on fire. She so rarely called me by my name, yet each she was luring me toward a sweet trap I would never want to escape.
Yet each
Good
time
night.
it kind of cut out for a second.
Yet each time she did, it was as if she was luring me toward a sweet trap I would never want to escape. Good night. I turned and fell silent, finding that the vexing woman had already disappeared. Ceres. I sunk to the floor and clutched my chest as I took deep, careful breaths. My fist met the floor, causing the stone tiles to groan. I should have tried harder to understand her, perhaps to get her to stay, to at least make her truly understand that I wanted her to spend the rest of the night with me. The departure made my heart ache in ways I had not thought possible. When did I muttered to myself, tilting my head back to stare at the moon. It is as they say. A woman worthy of becoming a queen can defeat a king before he even knows a battle is being waged.
Yay!
That's it. Okay, so how's Idris sounding? Is he sounding appropriate?
Yeah, that was
Appropriately-
super appropriate for the scene.
Okay, good. Good. Okay, so next, what is scene 2? All right, so we don't have Justin with us. Justin will be taking the voice of, how do you pronounce this guy? Tigao?
Tika.
So that's how everyone pronounces it. It's technically supposed to be Taga,
Tigao.
but
Taga.
all my readers are like, no, make it Tagao. So I'm like, I'm not sure which to go with, the actual pronunciation or what everyone wants it to be.
It's your character.
Yeah, I know.
It's your character.
Taga.
You can-
Taga.
Taga. Yeah, because
Explain
that's the
the-
actual
set up the
Welsh
scene a little bit.
pronunciation.
Set up the scene a little bit for us, our audience.
So, let's see. How do I do this without spoilers? Ceres is currently away from the city with one of the demon grandmasters. Taga is the grandmaster of magics, and he kind of whisked her away without permission to go take her on this training excursion to kind of help train her, but also to gauge how much she needs to learn.
Cool.
I think that's about the gist of it. This is like a part of the chapter. I took basically something out of the middle of the chapter.
Perfect. All right. And the scene begins with Tega.
All right, 1 second. I'm just
I could just do the voice.
Hold on. I'm just sending invites to, oh crap. Yeah, I'm sending invites to Lori and Justin in case they feel like jumping in.
Cool.
I've totally just forgot to invite them before. So I'm a dummy. There we go. Okay. So what does Tigao sound like?
Over the top a bit. So, upon first meeting Ceres, He's so over the top that he, grabs her hand, wants to kiss it, and is calling her like a moonfire goddess and shit. Like, he's over the top.
Okay, and he like, what do you want? Like a high voice, a low voice, accent?
Kind of medium, somewhere between high and low, like just normal voice.
Normal dude voice.
Accent would be the same as Idris because Taga is also an incubus.
Okay. All right. Are you ready then?
Yes.
How graceful!
A voice exclaimed from nearby. I whirled around, aiming all my swords at the voice's owner. It took me a moment to place his face, but I chose not to lower my weapons. Taga, Grand Master of Magics, simply grinned at me and clapped his hands together in delight.
You are doing well, I see, Lady Moonfire. I simply couldn't resist the urge to come check in on your progress any longer, not after hearing about your display in court.
You heard about that? I grimaced.
Darling, everyone has heard about it.
Taga laughed. He pushed away from the wall and strode toward me.
His Majesty should be ashamed of himself, trapping the beautiful butterfly here where she can't truly spread her wings. My lord, His Majesty's chief concern is Lady Moonfire's safety.
One of my guards sighed at the Grand Master.
These Radians, and what could their spies do against a champion and a Grand Master?
Taga scoffed, waving a dismissive hand.
Lady Moonfire requires real opponents. That much is clear from watching her. We can hardly have our champion die from boredom.
While I don't disagree, I started to protest.
Put away your weapons, Lady Moonfire.
Taga gave me a broad, mischievous grin.
We are going to test your abilities against something with a little more oomph. You hardly need His Majesty's coddling.
The moment my weapons disappeared, the Grand Master sprang forward and pulled me into a pillar of light with him. When my vision recovered, I shivered and glanced up with a sharp glare. Taga's cheerful expression didn't falter. Instead, he procured a cloak from his inventory and offered it to me. I set aside my indignation for the moment and examined our surroundings. We were in a forest somewhere, and there was no snow on the ground. There was no snow on the ground. It was cold, but sunny. However, there were no birds chirping or any other sounds to indicate animals. Where are we? I frowned at Taga, watching as he pulled on a pair of thick leather gloves.
The southern reaches of the Valewood Forest.
Taga began, flexing his fingers a few times.
The Mages Guild received a request to clear out monsters who have been making it difficult for other welders to build nearby. Normally, I'd send some of our recruits to deal with it, but this seemed like an excellent opportunity to test the famed first consort.
So, you want me to kill stuff? I tilted my head, watching the incubus grin cheerfully. And you somehow thought whisking me away without His Majesty's permission was a good idea?
You will be fine.
Taga laughed.
Here, draw your swords. We're looking for wood slimes. More often than not, we use fire to hunt such creatures. However, you have chosen to use shadow magic and a less traditional form of spell sword. You need to learn to make your darkness mimic other elements.
Slimes. Okay. I chewed on the inside of my cheek and followed the incubus as he skipped through the underbrush. I've seen way too much hentai. Hentai? Hopefully.
Hentai.
Say that one more time.
Hentai.
One more
I've seen
time.
way too much hentai.
Okay.
Obviously, I've seen so much. I've seen way too much hentai. Hopefully, not that kind of slimes. As funny as that could be. I wonder, If they are that kind of slime, could I tame one and keep it as a pet? To use in questioning people, of course. I didn't have any other brilliant options, so I followed Tagaw through the forest and kept my attention on our surroundings. The silence of the forest made me uneasy, though the Grand Master appeared completely at ease. He juggled several balls of flame in one hand as we walked, his expression infuriatingly cheerful. Whatever his relationship with Idris was, I couldn't believe Tagaw might consider his behavior acceptable. Given how intent Idris was on protecting me, I had a feeling he'd tear into Tagaw once he realized who was responsible for whisking me away from the place.
Palace.
From the palace. Though I hoped he wouldn't punish my guards too badly.
There's one!
Tagaw exclaimed, putting an arm around my shoulders. He pointed toward a clearing, while I just stared in disbelief.
There, a wood slime. I could kill it with ease, but that wouldn't be of any use to you. Fight it, and I will observe. If it becomes too dangerous, I will kill the creature for you, darling.
And you want me to kill this with shadow flames? I sighed in exasperation. How am I supposed to do that? It's the size of a house.
Easily. You summon your shadows with the intent to inflict burns on your foe.
Tagaw gave me an encouraging smile.
Perhaps you shall become Ceres Shadowflame if you perfect the art. Or if you are truly talented, you will learn to make your shadows mimic any number of elements. Now then, shoo! Show the wood slime what Lady Moonfire is capable of.
Of all the instructors. I sighed and settled my gaze on the gargantuan slime. A mere thought was all it took to make darkness engulf my floating blades, but I had no idea how I was meant to turn the shadows into flames. Willing them to burn seemed too simple, and I doubted whether the Grand Master was truly the straightforward sort. After all, he was even more ridiculous than Idris had been on Earth. Even so, I decided to take the chance and do as Tagaw had said. I didn't have a better idea of how to make shadows take on flame-like properties, so why not give him the benefit of a doubt, right? I redirected one of my swords to float in front of me before concentrating on the desire to burn the wood slime into oblivion. The creature was dark brown and covered in what looked to be moss, mushrooms, and broken pieces of trees. It appeared to be eating a fallen tree, though I saw what looked to be humanoid bones floating inside its body. Good enough reason to kill it. My butterflies swirled more quickly around my sword, leaving threads of flame-like darkness in their wake. When I was satisfied with the amount, I shot the sword through the slime's body. The creature squealed in pain, briefly forming spikes on the surface of its body before firing them outward. I motioned with one hand, summoning a wall of darkness in front of me while calling my weapon back with the other. Grimacing, I summoned shadowy flames around both my swords and struck the creature again. This time, it rolled toward me. I leapt out of its way and summoned my wharf fan from my inventory, calling forth a blast of darkness as I waited for my swords to return to me. The darkness struck the moss on the slime's back and caught it alight with black flames. However, that wasn't enough to kill the creature. Instead, it split into a dozen smaller slimes, shredding the burning moss. You have successfully learned Dark Flame Flourish. Shadow Magic proficiency has increased to 160. Shadow Dancer proficiency has reached 148. Ugh! I'm doing a terrible job of keeping all three skills even. I whined internally. Shadow Magic was now my highest at 160, while Spell Sword was 155 and Krastergok had stalled out at 130. I'd originally wanted to keep them even, Yet I had to focus harder on shadow magic and spell sword because they were so new. Krastergok, at least, shared similarities with Earth martial arts. Okay, and how do I kill the baby ones? I asked, but no answer came. Taga just grinned from where he'd hopped onto a tree branch and continued swinging his legs back and forth like a child. Singing, sighing, I quickly counted the slimes, losing track around 30. I definitely did not have 30 swords. Instead, I needed a way to bunch them up and execute them all at once. Okay, Saris, think. Darkness in most games usually has certain properties attached to it, right? Flames, ice, lightning, whatever, are all common forms of darkness to take on. What else can I do? A grin spread across my face when it came to me. Gravity. Gravity was what I could do. Spells and skills that could pull in or move targets were often dark aspect spells in some form or another. Even if that wouldn't work, making it act like ice could potentially slow the creatures down long enough for me to kill them off. I decided to take the gravity approach first and made a downward sweeping motion with my closed fan. The ground beneath the slimes fell in on itself, creating a small dent, nearly the breadth of the original slime creature. The slimes attempted to roll up the edges, but couldn't. The slimes attempted to roll up the edges, but couldn't gain enough momentum. However, they soon began attempting to push each other up the walls. Another motion with my fan created an orb of darkness at the center of the dent. A third swipe from my fan, and butterflies exploded outward from the sphere and form. Sorry. A third swipe of my fan, and butterflies exploded outward from the sphere to form a vortex, sucking the wood slimes away from the rim and toward the orb. Calling my swords, I summoned intense heat around them and plunged them both into the orb, creating an explosion. The slimes popped like superheated oil and soaked into the disrupted soil. Grinning, I brought my swords back to me and let them hover behind my right shoulder. Sword magic proficiency has reached 173. Spell sword proficiency has reached 172. Sword dancer proficiency has reached 158. Really? That much experience? Well, I suppose it was a lot of monsters. I considered, staring at the hole for a moment. Maybe this is a higher level area? Or is it from using new spells? I glanced up at Taga as he dropped from the tree and landed next to me, a rather serious look on his face.
Where did you learn that?
Taga frowned at me. Learn what? I stared at him.
That was not standard usage of shadow magic.
Taga narrowed his eyes at me, then sighed, shaking his head.
Would this be some otherworlder trick?
Well, I was thinking about the darkness in games I can do, I offered, making him grimace. It varies by game, but there
Hold
are
on.
a lot of games
Annie,
where
can you
darkness
start?
is a utility element rather than an offensive one.
Uh-oh.
I didn't want to be dogpiled by all those slimes, so making him stay put. Uh-uh. Are we back?
I don't know. I think the internet broke for a second.
Ruh-roh.
Yeah. Did you notice, Spawn? Or were you hearing Annie fine the whole time?
I was hearing her fine the whole time.
Oh, okay. Well, then it might be just my internet that broke.
Should I take it from it varies by game? It varies by game. But there are a lot of games where darkness is a utility element rather than an offensive one. I didn't want to be dogpiled by all those slimes, so making them stay put seemed like a good idea.
You did a fine job, Lady Moonfire.
Taga nodded.
It is simply an odd choice of strategy. In Jariskir, shadow magic is almost solely used for offense or for healing. Natives certainly wouldn't have thought to use it in such a way.
Well, if you can use it to mimic flames, then you can use it to mimic ice. And ice can be used to bind things in place, right? I pointed out.
Wind would have normally been used for what you just did, but that was most certainly pure darkness. Neither fire, nor wind, nor ice.
Taga tilted his head for a moment, then walked over to the crater I'd left. He nudged the soil, his expression skeptical.
And you most certainly destroyed them in one blow. I see Idris has been underestimating you a great deal if he thinks you require protection.
Underestimating me? I gave him a doubtful look.
Yes, your proficiencies may be low, but your mind for strategy is clearly higher than a mere novice or apprentice.
Taga summoned a large jar from his inventory and scooped some of the slime-stained soil into it.
Furthermore, an apprentice wouldn't have thought to combine their spells in such a way. Or, at least, a Jariskir native would not have. Otherworlders often come up with odd strategies, but I was not expecting it from you, my lady.
Well, I am originally an otherworlder, I pointed out, shrugging. That said, most games I've played rely on combining skills or chaining them in order to kill something. You can't just use one or two skills and hope the thing is dead, unless you're much stronger than that target. Though I get the feeling HP doesn't work quite the same here as it does in games.
HP.
Taga shot me a puzzled look. Health points. I shrugged again and walked over to him. It's how you track whether or not you need healing during a fight. Strikes you take chip away at your HP, and eventually you die if your health goes to 0. Of course, since they're just a game, you respawn. Well, unless it's a permadeath game. I was gonna be like, what's this crazy game term? Well, unless it's a permadeath game. Since I'm a champion, you can think of that as permadeath mode, apparently.
Otherworlder or not, a blade through the heart will kill anyone.
Taga stated, shooting me another frown.
Clearly, you need to learn far more about this world than I expected.
Expected.
Scene. Done. All right, cool. So that was Tagar.
Kind of
more
killed me because
Idris.
that was perfect to go.
All right, we have Emrys in this scene as well. This next one, who will also be played by Justin. And what is your direction for Emrys?
So he's a little bit more gruff and rough around the edges than Idris. Welsh name problems. Like he's still kind of like nobility level incubus, but he's kind of the one that when he was younger, he'd be the one that's getting into trouble, and then Idris would have to bail him out of the trouble.
Okay. And then we have Egar.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what that voice was that you did yesterday that Ayano and I were saying would be like perfect Edgar.
Oh, are you talking about the the couple? The snob couple?
Yeah, like kind of like that. Like he's really snooty.
Yeah.
Snooty asshole, really. Like
Okay. I can do that. Edgar.
And he's kind of older too, so.
And then Eladir.
Yeah, Eladir. Another incubus. He's the uptight, has a stick up his ass, must follow the rules, kind of
Okay.
character, and he serves as Idris's advisor.
Gotcha. All right. I think I got something for him. These are all supposed to be Justin except for Idris, but we'll give him a nice nice template to work with here.
And
Some inspiration.
do you want to
And
do any quick setup or anything for this scene? Is that required?
Um,
I'm gonna go get a glass of water real quick.
let me scroll through real quick.
Gwither.
Yeah, Gwithyr. Any setup for this scene would be pretty spoilery.
Okay.
So it can just let people cry and guess what's going on.
Good. Crying people is sexy.
It's my favorite.
Well, according to certain channels on Discord.
All right. It's you, Annie.
All right.
Almost no one knew except for me.
No, it is me. Saris. Whose name I refuse to pronounce correctly. Bruce, inform Gwithyr and his people what happened.
Whoa. Hold on. Are we on the same? I don't think we're on the same scene.
Oops. Oh, I think I might have skipped a scene.
Yup. Oh man, there's only 2 gummy bears left.
Right. Okay. Oh, there's only 2 gummy bears.
I just ate 2. I'll leave the other 2.
Don't.
I'm doing it.
Okay.
Only gummy bears.
Right. I pursed my lips, a spike of annoyance running through me. I still felt a strong urge to throttle Corleotir. Corleotir.
We need your help, Bond. We need your help.
I'm just gonna go on.
Corleotir.
Okay. I still felt a strong urge to throttle Corleotir. By appropriate, I mean you need to keep your hands and tail away from erogenous areas while in public. No groping the honkers, ass, between the legs.
Honkers?
Idris tilted his head. Sighing, I pointed to my boobs.
More earth-slaying.
Yes, I replied dryly. Groping of any sort in public isn't considered acceptable behavior, even between couples. You'll see people grab each other's ass sometimes, or people will put their hand on their partner's hip instead of keeping it on their waist. But the people around them get huffy about it.
I see.
Idris murmured, rubbing his chin.
So, it is not necessarily that the people involved do not enjoy it, but rather it makes the people around them uncomfortable. Therefore, it is considered unacceptable behavior.
Exactly, I nodded.
You specified in public.
Idris drawled, a flicker of intimacy in his gaze.
Was that an oversight on your part? Or...
It'd be stupid of me to say, hands off, in private when feeding is an issue. I pointed out, watching his smirk grow. I'm not really against...
There you 2 are!
A voice called from down the hall. I promptly shut my mouth and glanced over my shoulder, finding Emrys, coming toward us. He was dressed in what I could only assume was ceremonial armor of some kind.
We received confirmation that the Sradians have entered the city, Your Majesty. It appears that they are scouring Sajari air before coming to the palace. As usual, the only women they will find are otherworlders. We shall await them in the throne room.
Idris shook his head, sliding an arm behind my back.
Ceres, you did not answer me in full.
Oh, right. I shook my head slightly. I'll cooperate on both counts.
Glad am I to hear it.
Idris flashed me a brilliant smile, giving me a brief squeeze before turning his attention to Emrys.
You and Eladir are to escort us even with the You and Eladir are to escort us even within the palace until we are satisfied the Asradians are gone. I refuse to take any chances with Ceres's safety. Very well, Your Majesty.
Emrys bowed briefly and then glanced down at me.
It's a shame the two of you returned so close to the tax. Looks like, at the rate you're going, you could have hit journeymen in your specializations before they'd gotten here if you'd had a few weeks.
Gold or journeyman? So soon? I arched a doubtful eyebrow. I was under the impression that it takes a long time to level.
It's the last two tiers that take a while.
Emrys offered as the three of us made our way through the palace.
Give it a few weeks, maybe a month or two, and someone with talent can reach journeyman. Expert and master take an age, and grandmaster takes longer still.
Idris added, shooting me an amused glance.
You look as if you're up to something.
No, not exactly. I shook my head. You tell me something takes a long time, I become determined to blow that estimate timetable out of the water, even under normal circumstances.
And I will encourage you to do so, within reason.
Idris shot me a look and lifted one of my hands in his.
Your health, safety, and learning are just as important.
I'm not going to shred my hands and feet again, I scoffed.
Here we are.
Emrys stated, clearing his throat. He gave us a pointed look, and Idris immediately adopted a dangerous, frigid mask. I tilted my head and glanced between the two of them. Maintaining a mask of any kind was not my forte.
Do not worry about it. Your role is to stay by my side, be beautiful, and look for threats to us both.
Idris reassured me, pulling me into the throne room with him. The nobles bowed deeply to their king as we passed them. Most kept their expressions passive, but a few shot me venomous glares or lecherous looks.
Perhaps it is time I redistributed wealth and status.
How about we worry about how we're going to deal with the Isradians first? I stated dryly, watching as Idris took a seat on his throne. He watched me with an amused smile. And what am I supposed to do now, exactly?
Tradition would dictate you sit at my feet.
Idris replied, flicking a dangerous glare somewhere behind me.
If that is unacceptable, you may stand to my left, or perhaps drape yourself over my lap.
I bit back a snarky comment, smoothed my expression over, and took a seat on the highest step of Idris's throne. He let out a low chuckle and briefly ran his fingers along one of my horns before turning his attention toward Eladir. A moment later, the brooding man strode over with a few cushions for me. I took them with mumbling thanks and adjusted myself so that I was sitting on one hip and facing Idris's long legs. There were a few other options without cramping my tail.
Relax, Ceres.
He purred, running his fingers through my hair.
If you are too tense, the Asradians will grow suspicious.
Getting comfortable with a tail is hard, okay? I shot him an irritated pout, causing him to pause. But it didn't last. An entertained smile spread across his face, and he brushed some of my hair out of my face.
You really are more comfortable with me now, aren't you?
Idris moved his hand away and shot me a small smile.
I would like to discuss the matter more with you, but perhaps it can wait until this business is over. I can be satisfied knowing that if you choose to push me away again, it will truly be your choice.
Assuming this comrade of hers even did the job properly this time. I bit back a snort.
Your Majesty, you truly intend for this woman to be first consort?
One of the nobles stepped forward, speaking in troubled tones.
As a champion, she deserves all the help we can give her, no?
Idris shot the man an amiable smile.
Your concern is noted. However, I could not possibly allow Ceres to be assigned lower status because she is our champion.
I glanced up at Idris when his tone shifted to one of menace. It wasn't directed at the noble who had approached us, nor any of those behind him. The incubi in the room tensed ever so slightly, shooting uneasy glances toward the door. When Idris noticed my questioning glance, a smile flitted across his lips and he slid his fingers through my hair again, taking care not to bump into my horns.
They sent scouts ahead of them into the palace.
He offered, his expression pleasant but otherwise unreadable.
I would have liked to have had a proper seat prepared for you before their arrival. I hope you can forgive me for having you sit here.
A proper seat would be too suspicious if you want to maintain this harem scheme, I pointed out, turning my gaze away from him and toward the greater room. How long until I'm capable of detecting or seeing through stealth?
You will be able to sense them once you reach Journeyman, but seeing them comes much later.
Idris murmured, continuing to stroke my hair. I didn't want to admit it, but I enjoyed the attention. Though I probably would have enjoyed it more if I'd known whether the gesture was genuine or simply for show.
Ah, the beast's cage is as extravagant as ever.
A familiar voice echoed loudly from somewhere down the hall. I tensed, instinctively clutching Idris's leg.
If the prideful creatures didn't expend so much of their resources on grandeur, perhaps they would be able to fight back.
Oh,
Ceres?
sorry. Idris nudged one of my horns as my tail snapped back and forth. I'm pretty sure that voice is Edgar Odillo. Edgar Odillo. I'm pretty sure that voice is Edgar Odillo, the Emperor's advisor. I hissed, doing my best to relax my grip on the king's leg. Even so, I wasn't confident that I could keep myself from launching myself at the bastard's throat if I didn't hold on to Idris in some manner. Edgar is the one I had to tour Darmos with. Adric was along to provide protection, but Edgar is the one who did all the talking and staring.
Then it is not fear that is making you cling to me?
Idris removed his hand from my head and motioned Emeris closer. The demon in question released a low growl before summoning a great axe and resting it on the ground in front of him.
If the humans make one wrong move, they will not live to make another. On that you have my word, Ceres. I must ask that you do your best to conduct yourself in an unassuming way. Your fan should be in your hand, and it would be best if you appeared to be more interested in me than these proceedings.
And that is supposed to work how, exactly? I battled the urge to roll my eyes. Idris, they already know I'm the champion. I've met this twisted animal before. Unassuming or not, I still want to rip his throat out. Sorry. I have like a burp on the verge of coming out. I took a deep breath. attempting to calm myself before pulling my fan from my waistband and snapping it open. If all else failed, at least I could hide most of my expression behind it. The sensation of Idris's tail slinking around my torso startled me into glancing up at him. While the gesture itself hasn't flustered me, the look on his face sure as hadn't flustered me. The look on his face sure as hell did. Huffing, I turned my attention away from him and bristled when I caught the sound of his low chuckle. I'd have to figure out a way to get him back for this nonsense later. Then it wouldn't get us into trouble with the Israelians or their spies.
Ah, and there's the king of beasts.
Edgar exclaimed with false cheer as he and his escort entered the throne room. The fire in the noble's eyes made it clear that the people of Sejarir were anything but defeated. How they managed to restrain themselves was beyond me.
You would keep your champion chained at your side? How very awful. Given the gods' investigation, I think we can all agree that you have no right to talk to me about what is best for a champion.
Idris stated, his scimitar smile just as cold as the expression in his eyes.
The Emperor's advisor has come all this way to oversee tax collection, has he? To what do we owe this pleasure?
Pleasure my ass, sticking a cactus up my...
Saris, please.
Idris flicked one of my horns.
I'm here to offer you a trade.
Edgar gave Idris a bored, greasy grin.
You give us your champion, Nabir Zon will no longer have to pay us tax.
I felt my heart leap into my throat. If I knew anything about gray area morality and trades, it was that a choice between one person and many often favored the many. After all, Idris cherished his people and wanted to protect them. I wasn't convinced that a champion was important enough for him to skip on such an opportunity. Though it sounds too good to be true. I pursed my lips and forced myself to slow the pace of my fan while I considered it. We knew the humans of the Israelian Empire weren't trustworthy, even if they didn't take any more tax. The offer could indicate that they were ready to move on to whatever the next stage of their plan was. Given what I'd heard while in Darmos, I was relatively sure that meant they would be seeking to wipe out the demonic races.
And if we do not?
Idris questioned, his tail tightening around me.
Then we will take our tax and return in another 6 months for more.
Edgar laughed. Is it Edgar?
Edgar.
Edgar laughed.
And then in another 6 months, and another.
How often do they usually come? I asked when I felt Idris tense further.
Once every human lifetime,
Idris answered, with an almost inaudible growl.
Don't you want to see the champions reunited in service of our glorious emperor?
Edgar sneered. I glanced to the side at Idris when I felt a shiver of rage run through his tail and down his leg alike.
A lunar elf and a succubus. You will take your tax, and then you will leave.
Idris spoke in a tone that made the humans go still like deer.
I will not have you or your tax stranded by the winter snows. Eladir, how long do they have? The first of the storms will arrive in 2 days, Your Majesty, perhaps sooner.
Eladir answered, bowing deeply.
You would trade your people rather than lose that?
Edgar spat, pointing at me. Before any of us could react, Idris was out of his throne in his full demonic glory and had lifted the much smaller human by the front of his gaudy robes. Edgar's escort scrambled away from the pair, reaching for their swords, but stopping when Idris's guards moved toward them.
That is Ceres Moonfire, champion and first consort to the king of Nabezon.
Idris spat at the terrified man, his wings flexing as he adjusted his grip.
We would go to war for her and eviscerate every last human who dared stand in our way. Remember that!
Idris tossed the soiled man into his guards and dashed forward, his sword appearing in hand. I cursed internally and summoned my own swords, one aimed at Idris and the rest at the humans who had moved to intercept him. The king grew still and shot a dangerous look at me over his shoulder. I think you've made your point, and they can't deliver the message if they're dead. I pointed out, as Edgar scooted backward on his ass, leaving a smear on the floor. He let out a feminine squeal with my sword. He let out a feminine squeal when my sword drew closer to him. And you lot are guests here. If you wouldn't let us get away with it while in your lands, you should refrain from doing it similar. My God. If you wouldn't let us get away with it while in your lands, you should refrain from doing similar here.
You would threaten?
Edgar blubbered, raising his chin high into the air.
I am the Emperor's advisor, woman. Yes. Hold your head high. I will have the chance to sever it before long.
Idris shot the human one last glare before turning on his heel and stalking back toward me, his demonic form melting away. When I was satisfied the humans weren't going to attack his back, I returned my blades to my inventory.
That was a dangerous move, Ceres. But you are right. I should not kill them. Yet.
He trudged back to the throne with a fiery expression on his face, but it softened when his eyes met mine. Instead of speaking, he reached down and hoisted me up by the waist, the moment he was close enough. I did my best not to fidget as he pulled me onto the throne with him. No fidgeting was the only way I knew how to react. Not fidgeting was the only way I knew how to react. I wanted to do more. Embrace him, nuzzle him, something. But it didn't feel right to do so after I'd shoved him away so many times, regardless of the cause. However, that didn't stop me from shooting Edgar a victorious sneer before reopening my fan and hiding my expression once again. Like a good little consort, of course. The first consort.
Emrys's men will make certain you and yours do not overstep the boundaries of our treaty.
Idris informed the humans, his tone one of immense boredom.
If you do not wish to die in the storm, you had best make haste.
And what doesn't endanger the treaty? I questioned, doubtful.
We have a reputation for acting before we think. It will be fine.
He pulled me up so he could nuzzle into my shoulder before releasing a heavy sigh.
You needn't be so concerned, Ceres. The fools chose an awful time to collect their tax and will be dealt with accordingly.
Ah. I placed my hands on his shoulders and gave him a look. That's all well and good, but won't they grow suspicious if you deal with them? And maybe you should let me off your lap.
We cannot leave quite yet. And I intend for you to stay right where you are.
Idris brought a hand up to my face and pulled me into a soft, brief kiss. The outraged snarl from somewhere behind us made it clear the humans hadn't left yet.
Silence, human. Ceres chose us, and you will not be changing that. Especially not with such vile, yet somehow childish, behavior. Or do you wish to contest the god's decision?
I glanced toward the human party as Idris loosened his grip, enough to allow me to curl up next to him on the oversized throne. A small smirk coming to my lips, I hooked one leg over Idris's thigh and leaned into his torso with my bust, resting my right hand low against his abdomen. If I hadn't been so close to him, I never would have noticed the shiver that ran through him or the quiet groan that left his mouth. More ways to play with and test him. Excellent. I could get used to the whole first consort nonsense if it provided me with more opportunities like that.
The gods!
Edgar grew pale, his voice hoarse. He coughed into one hand, but it did nothing for his vocal cords.
We will leave tomorrow morning, once our horses have rested.
The humans fled the throne room and Idris released a heavy sigh. Several long moments passed before the nobles and soldiers alike erupted into agitated mutters and snarls. I could only assume that meant the spies had also taken their leave, but I wasn't confident enough in the assumption to test my luck.
Well then, Cyrus.
Idris trailed his fingers down my side as he spoke, not stopping until his hand rested on my hip.
What do you think we should do about our guests? Aside from kill them, of course, as that is not an option.
Give the Otherworlders a quest to protect Sajari ears, citizens, and actual guests, I suggested, glancing up at him. Oh, that way, you can test their loyalty, protect your people, and still have the numbers required to protect the palace and its grounds. It would also make it clear to the Otherworlders what is going on.
Ah, so it would.
Idris smirked and glanced over to Ellicott.
Have one of your men handle Lady Moonfire's quest. Make certain that it is clear the Israelians are taking a portion of our population as tax, and that we are attempting to keep them from taking more than permitted. I will relay your orders at once, Your Majesty, Lady Moonfire.
Ellicott bowed and then stepped out of sight, leaving me to shoot Idris a questioning look.
Otherworlders are more likely to push themselves to perform well when the orders come from a beautiful woman.
Idris answered my unasked question with a mischievous grin. When his gaze shifted to his court, the mirth disappeared from his expression and he turned to ice.
Make the necessary preparations for our guests, and for what may come after. I also want emissaries sent to the other kings. We need to know if the Israelians are forcing similar deals.
Yay!
All right, that's the end of the scene. How long is the next scene?
Let me look if Word will stop being stupid.
That's doubtful.
Yeah, very doubtful. 1,280 words, including like the script and notations, the words.
Okay, so this is a super short one.
Yeah.
In comparison. All right, so guys, this is our last scene. Vaughn, thank you for jumping in with us, and we're gonna go ahead and end it right after this scene is over. So, are there any new characters in here? There's Bruce. Can you tell us about him?
Bruce is a very troll AI.
Okay.
He's Ceres's quote-unquote house AI.
Okay.
So like he runs all of her apartment stuff, but also kind of goes with her in the world as well. If, like kind of uploads himself in his car or in her car when she's driving places and things like that. But mostly he's just a massive troll.
All right, and that is another one that's going to be Justin. Justin's taking the majority of the actual characters in this one. I'm just taking Idris. But yeah, so here goes. Here's the last scene that we're going to do for today. And then, like I said, we're going to end it. So remember, guys, if you want to check out the Kindle version of the book, if you can't wait for the audio version because we kick so much ass here and make it sound so good, check out the link below in the description. And also, there's a ton of other links, including the Sound Booth Theater Live Facebook group, the Gamelet Society Facebook group, the Lit RPG Forum Facebook group, and lastly, the Discord for Sound Booth Theater Live, where Annie will be narrating this book live, doing the actual recording, and Bon will be there hanging out and making fun of her the entire time. So thank you guys for coming and watching. If you like this video, please hit that like button. If this is your first time being here and you had fun, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell, and you can check out the rest of our channel. We have more than 150 videos now, and it's just a bunch of crazy bullshit with me and Annie and our other two narrators narrating as well, hanging out with all sorts of authors, and drinking too. Lots of drinking. So thanks so much, guys. And Annie, take it away.
All right. Bruce, inform Gwithier and his people what happened. I tapped the dashboard, watching a blue light flicker to life. Have the front desk prepare some good liquor for me, too, while you're at it. I'm going to need it after this mess.
Very well, mistress. Idris, would you care for anything?
No. The rest of our drive was spent in silence. Idris silently...
The no should be Idris.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Idris, would you care for anything? No.
The rest of our drive was spent in silence. Idris silently fumed, while I simply attempted to process his behavior. I couldn't recall a time when someone had gotten so pissed off, seemingly on my behalf. By the sound of things, it was more personal than that. Clearly, he'd sensed or intuited just how foul the men were. It was easier and less complicated to think that information had been the real reason for his rage. When we strode into the apartment building, I collected a small box containing several types of liquor and the snacks that complemented them. By the amount, it looked like Bruce had either ordered more than necessary, or the receptionists had assumed that Idris would be joining me. Once we were in the elevator and heading up through the building, Idris let out a soft sigh and asked,
Did I frighten you?
No. I shot him an odd look. You didn't frighten me when you were trying to kill me, so why would you frighten me when you were defending me?
Perhaps because magic isn't meant to exist in your world?
Idris suggested, narrowing his eyes.
Because you're a human and I'm a demon? Because...
Do you want me to be scared of you? I arched an eyebrow and watched him falter.
No, but I am fairly certain you should be.
He frowned. Sounds like a waste of energy, I shrugged, stepping out of the elevator. I wasn't sure if I should tell him his actions, such as killing my would-have-been husband, had actually come as a relief. When we got to my door, I sighed and glanced up at the brooding man beside me. Can you hold this for a moment?
Of course.
I handed the box to him and pulled my keys out of my purse. Once inside, I turned to take the box from him, but he strode straight past me and carried it into the kitchen. I made a face at his back and closed the door, making certain to lock it.
You do not intend to sleep?
Idris asked, after setting the box down on the counter. He turned to watch me as I discarded my handbag and keys in their usual place. After that? No. I'm going to change out of this, get a glass or four of the strongest liquor in that box, and curl up on the sofa to watch something or read a book. I shook my head as I headed toward my bedroom door. If you're going to sleep, I'll try to be quiet. Before he could answer, I retreated into my room and proceeded to strip off my dress. Just being near those bastards had made me feel like I needed to shower, so I took one. Even so, I felt relieved and a little confused. I had hated the people from the compound for so long, even fantasized about getting to execute them for their crimes, or at least be responsible for their prison time. For the past few years, I'd come to accept that neither would ever happen due to the way our government functioned. Then, Idris had come along in his demonic glory and put an end to one of the fighters who had haunted me for so long. A demon who served vigilante justice. I laughed to myself. By the time I left my room again, almost an hour had passed, but I felt a little better. Idris, on the other hand, looked more worried than before. At least he seemed to put two and two together once he spotted my damp hair. I did my best not to stare at his nude torso or his too low pants. This man is trying to kill me, I swear. He's just changed his approach.
Would it be all right if we continued watching that anime we were watching earlier today?
Idris inquired as I walked past him.
Or did you perhaps have something else in mind?
That's fine. You should watch both as soon as possible anyway. I pulled a large glass of wine down and looked through the bottles of liquor. After brief deliberation, I pulled out the amaretto and filled my glass almost to the rim. Help yourself to whatever you want. They sent way too much for just one person. I strode into the living room and placed my glass on the coffee table before adjusting the curtains to block out the light. Next, I rummaged around for some blankets and tossed them on the couch. I had no intention of falling asleep beside Idris again, but I was cold after my shower and I refused to snuggle anywhere near him for warmth. You learn anything from the anime so far? I asked, taking a seat on the far left end of the sofa. My hope was that he'd get the point if I scrunched myself into the corner. The less temptation I had to deal with, the better.
Only that I will have to revise our plans several times over when we return.
Idris answered, sitting down directly beside me. So much for him taking the hint.
They leave out the strangest They leave out a fucking phone. Fucking ring. Phone ring, goddamn.
Almost sounds like an old-timey phone.
It does.
Sorry.
Sorry.
They leave out the strangest details. They delve into my personal life, as well as our plans for dealing with the Empire, yet leave out things such as my marital status or harem.
You have a harem? I turned to give him an incredulous look. Now I was definitely keeping my distance. It'd be way easier than I'd thought. Ugh, harem. Maybe I should have known. Medieval demon king and all. I added to that the list of reasons why not to get involved. Yet it was also disappointing.
Jealous?
Idris smirked. Definitely not. I rolled my eyes.
Is that so? You strike me as the sort of woman who would want to be my only kitten.
He smirked, broadened as I debated punching him. His smirk broadened as I debated punching him. You're terribly mistaken if you think I want to be your anything.
Even though I'm your favorite.
He motioned loosely toward the TV, and I twitched. Were my favorite. Not anymore. I scoffed. Even more infuriating than him, or my decision to see him, Even more infuriating than him, or my decision to see him as off-limits, was the fact that he seemed to reignite the childishness in me.
I'm hurt,
He exclaimed, clutching his heart. The sultry look on his face severely dampened the effect.
You could be so much more than simply our champion, Ceres.
I have no good reason to want to be more. I shot him an agitated look before plucking my glass of amaretto off the coffee table. Now shut up and watch the anime. I don't have the patience.
Perhaps I intend to give you a reason to want more.
Idris caught my free hand and kissed my knuckles, his lips curving into a smile against my skin.
I tire of other worlders abandoning us when they have gotten what they came for or came to do. If you need a reason to stay, I will become that reason. If I cannot, then I will find something that will make you wish to stay.
Just watch the damn anime, Idris.
All right, guys. Thanks again for watching. We are peacing out. And yeah, have a good day.